right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to a very special evening here at First Baptist Church, a night to celebrate Israel. For those of you that I've not had the privilege of meeting, my name is Jeff Myers. I have the privilege of being the senior pastor here at First Baptist Church, and I don't even know if I need to introduce you, Coach. I think everybody knows who you are. Do you want to introduce yourself for formalities?
Yeah, I'm Coach Bruce Pearl, War Eagle.
There you go. And tonight, Coach, you and I sound like the punchline to a joke. What happens when a Jewish basketball coach and a Baptist pastor walk into a room?
You fill it up?
Yeah, there you go.
What's the punchline?
I don't have one. It just sounds like one. So, but obviously, you and I come from differing faiths, but we have a very common passion. And that's a place known as Israel. And that's why we're gathered here to talk about Israel tonight. And so we've got a very special video to show everybody. It's kind of a lengthy video because it's got testimonies from the players, coaches, kind of set up the video of kind of how the trip came to be and why Israel. Everybody knows who
That's a great
you
question, Jeff.
First
of all, it is so nice to be here. And please forgive me if I say something
there you go.
Could rub you the wrong way, or because every now, they say don't ever talk religion and politics, and all I do is talk religion and politics, right? And that's tough.
It's gonna be fun though.
It's gonna be fun, right? Especially when I'm Jewish, right?
Yeah.
And then and you add the other thing.
We could go viral tonight. I mean, it could happen.
It definitely happen.
I don't have one. It just
the fact that there are so many folks that want to hear about Israel and hear from us is why I took my team to Israel and why I took them to Jerusalem. Because my players got to walk with Jesus tonight. And so they got to see where he was born. They got to see where he performed his miracles up in the Sea of Galilee. They got to see, where he was betrayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. And they will never be able to open up their Bible ever again the same way because it just comes to life. These are just facts. That's facts. You can decide what you want, where you are with what you're believing, but the fact is it happened. And it happened right there in Israel, and that's God's holy land. And I just couldn't think of a better place to have them be able to, get the basketball aspect of it, but also, get the history and get the religious and the spiritual. They all, and you'll see from this video, because we went with a little bit of a longer version of the video, because I want you to hear from the players. The players will tell you how they felt and how they were impacted. You'll hear from some of my coaches as well. You guys hear from me all the time. And so that's why we wanted to show this video, and then we'll have our discussion.
Now, I'll be honest, I'd never heard of a college basketball team touring Israel before. Is this a common thing?
Well, we're the first Power 5 team to ever do it. And one of the things I said when I was going to come to Auburn, we're going to make history. And so we made history. The fact that we took ESPN along with us and Jay Billis with us, it was like an infomercial for God, for Israel, for Auburn basketball. Those are kind of three things that matter to me. Maybe not in that order. God and Auburn basketball, my family, Israel, my wife,
your wife. Yeah, you might want to.
I do want to go home tonight. How about you?
You might want to put her between God and basketball.
But she told me, honey, tell the truth. Don't cuss and tell the truth. Those are two things she told me to do tonight. So she knows where she's at.
Yeah, both could happen. It could happen. Now, interesting, because I've been on multiple tours of Israel. You actually started your tour in Jerusalem. Most of my tours actually end in Jerusalem. Was there a reason y'all started there before we show the video?
You know what? I'm not really sure, but we got there in the evening and got to see sunset. And I think I wanted them first to see what they thought it would look like. Maybe not in that order. Because when you go to Jerusalem, it looks like what you think it's going to look like. And then build from there. And then, of course, we went up to, saw a lot of other places we'll talk about later. And then we ended in Tel Aviv, which is just a modern beach town, really. And it became very, very, real, kind of normal to me. It didn't look like any other beach town anywhere else. And that was important for them to see that it looked a lot like where they were from.
So obviously you have a Jewish background. At the beginning of the video, when y'all enter Jerusalem, there's a ceremony you do with the bread, the wine, all that.
Right.
For those of us who don't have a Jewish background, what is that? Because I've never done that on a tour of Israel.
Well, you know what? There are several traditions that we celebrate. There are three things that God commands the Jewish people to do. And we don't always do them all the time. And I'm sure everybody can relate to not doing all the things all the time that God wants us to do. But one of those things is to keep the Sabbath.
Sure.
And to rest and take that day and give it to Him. My wife reminds me of that all the time when I'm working 7 days a week, that I'm not observing the Sabbath. And the second thing would be, to do mitzvot, to live a life here where you do mitzvot simply means good deeds and doing good things. Now we all understand we can't do enough to get there, but we try, and that's what we're commanded to do. And the third thing that God wants us to do is to read the Bible, to be in a relationship with Him, to read Torah, and that's it. And so, that was sort of the foundation. And look, as a basketball coach, and my whole life, I've just tried to find ways to bring people together. That's what I do. It's not something I have to try to do. That's what I've always sort of believed in doing. And I grew up in Boston. And Boston was an incredibly wonderful ethnic town with great neighborhoods and great cultures and great traditions. You can't get better Italian food than in the north end of Boston. But there were ghettos, and there was an Italian ghetto and an Irish ghetto and a Jewish ghetto and a black ghetto. And if you crossed over into the wrong spot at the wrong time, it was an issue. It was an issue.
Sounds like Jerusalem. There are places.
There are places, absolutely. And there are quarters and things like that, yeah. And but I wasn't okay with that. I just didn't understand it. Because as an athlete, I'd go on the playground and we'd play stickball or we'd play hoop or we'd play whatever we would play. I didn't care what color anybody was. I didn't care whether they went to church or not or synagogue. It didn't matter. Could they guard somebody? Could they make a shot? That's all. Would they pass me the ball, right? That's all I cared about. But the rest of the world absolutely didn't care about that or cared about, way more. So I saw real racism, black and white. I saw real anti-Semitism. And one of the great challenges for me growing up, and I don't mind saying that here tonight, this is a hard reality. I grew up with my Catholic friends who believed that my people, the Jewish people, killed Jesus, their God, period. And I know it's the mob, and I know it's historically a fact that, obviously Jesus was portrayed. And I remember one time when I was having a hard time dealing with that. Think about that as a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid. You're old enough to kind of be old enough, right? How do you wrap your arms around the fact that your people, your grandfather, great-great-grandfather, were the ones that killed your dear friend's Lord and Savior? Pretty tough, right? And so, again, that was something that divided us. And then as I got a little older and I matured in my faith and I began to learn more about Jesus, I learned that He was Jewish, right? And so I said, wait a second. No, wait a second. Really? Like, doesn't that make us brothers? Does it make us at least cousins or something? No. He born Jewish, lived Jewish, died Jewish. He was a rabbi. And so, by the way, you know my wife's two favorite Jews are in the world? Me and Jesus. She hates when I do that.
I know you're a basketball coach, but we're already up to 2 strikes. You do realize it with your wife, the order and then that little joke there. So you got to make it a whole hour, Coach, without one.
She's my rock. We are in this. We're in this together because as Brandy has, and she, I'm so proud of my wife. I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader of our home as the man. That's the way it is, and at least that's written down someplace, I guess. Can you still say that nowadays? Is that okay? Am I safe to say that here nowadays?
I got good news. It may not be politically correct.
Okay.
But it's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
It is. But she reads the Bible for hours every single day. And, it's funny, we're on the same journey together. So as she goes ahead and marries a Jewish man, and she starts to spend a little bit more time in the Old Testament, and she's reading things in the Old Testament that she never heard in church. She didn't hear a lot about Jesus being Jewish in church. She just didn't. And she didn't hear a lot about the festivals that Jesus celebrated every single year of his life. 3 times a year, he traveled like 70 miles from up in the Galilee down to Jerusalem and back up that hill for things like Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, the Jewish New Year, or Sukkot, the Festival of the Tabernacles, which we're in right now.
That's right. We're wrapping that up right now,
yes.
Chronologically. We are actually chronologically in a Jewish feast right now.
Right now. And so as my wife tries to do and be and live more like Jesus is and was and wants us to be, she started to celebrate those festivals. Not because she married to a Jewish man, but because that's what Jesus did. And again, once again, doesn't that bring us together? It does. And so that's part of my messaging, and that's part of why we went to Israel.
All right, I like it. So we're about to watch a 20-minute video. Yep. It's kind of like a small documentary, kind of a movie. It's got kind of that mesmerizing narration voice that's in it. So we're actually going to depart from the stage. We're going to run this clip about 20 minutes long. It'll give you kind of the whole trip in 20 minutes, and then we'll be back. So here is, I guess, War Eagle from Israel. Amen. That sound good? There we go.
Always be a special one for the Auburn men's basketball team, as the Tigers flew 10 hours overseas to play basketball in the Holy Land. This is the story of Auburn basketball's 2022 foreign tour. When the Tigers touched down in Israel, they immediately headed to Jerusalem for a sunset traditional Shehechianu welcome ceremony.
Let's go. We're in Israel, baby. Let's get it.
The opportunity to take your players to another part of the world, to have them, for most of them, travel internationally for the very first time, to sort of connect the dots and see how in some ways it's not so big that you can get on a plane in New York and in 12 hours be in another continent. I think it just brings us all together.
We're here, baby. We're here. Beautiful, man.
Stretch, yeah. Stretch, yeah. Go stretch, yeah. Go stretch.
So first of all, welcome you to the Holy Land, to welcome you to the holy city of Jerusalem, and to welcome you home. And the reason we have this ceremony is actually a biblical reason. We have your wine, olive oil, salt, and the beautiful challah bread.
Cheers, camera.
Cheers. I'm gonna touch it.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. That's a really good one, Taylor.
After the opening ceremonies, the team was excited to begin day 2 touring Old City Jerusalem.
There we go. Ready for tour. Let's get it. Yeah, we ready now.
You know, it was really good for me being Jewish, being able to see the other side, of the Bible, being able to see the Christian parts of Jerusalem.
Personally, to be able to, to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, where you think about the place where Jesus was right before his arrest and then crucifixion, that is a very holy place and a place that really stuck out to me.
I didn't think that I would break down, but at the Church of All Nations, just something came over me, and it was a feeling like I'd never had before.
The Via Dolorosa, the path that Jesus walked from the Garden of Gethsemane all the way up to his crucifixion, it was 1.5 miles, all uphill. I'll forever be grateful for that from Jesus. So I want to let my kids know that even though the crucifixion was what it was, the path to the crucifixion was probably the hardest thing in the world to do. And it shows just how physically strong Jesus really was.
Auburn continued through the Lion's Gate and visited the 5th station of the cross on Via Dolorosa, where the popular pilgrimage ritual is to place your hand into the imprint where Jesus stabilized himself against the wall when carrying the cross. The tour continued to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the team saw the stone of anointing, where Jesus' body was prepared for burial.
I'm real heavy on my faith. Just going in there and walking the walk. And like years and years ago, that's where he was at. You know, it just makes it more real. I know it's always real, but it makes it a little bit more real to actually experience it firsthand.
That was a beautiful tour, people. I enjoyed it.
First day of tour was a success, you know what I'm saying? We got to see a lot of great things, and we got to see where Jesus Christ was anointed on a stone, see his burial, and see the stone where he was crucified on. So it was just so much to cover in one day, and I'm just grateful we got the chance to be over here.
On the Tigers' third day in Israel, the team traveled south of Jerusalem to Bethlehem.
Here in Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, you know what I'm saying? Trying to get as close to God as possible.
The team then headed over to the Church of Nativity to see the place where Jesus was born. And it was there where everyone broke out in a familiar song. Arguably, the most powerful experience for the team was visiting Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum to learn more about the hard history of the Holocaust.
You know about like the basics about, you know, the killing, you know, just getting slaughtered and everything, but now just learning like the more in detail versions, like even they show like a list of names they found from, you know, people that were killed and that, murdered and that. And you know, that was just, you know, just a one-time in life experience.
For the guys being able to go to Yad Vashem and really understand what the Holocaust was, because I don't think that it's taught well enough in America. And for our guys, you know, you kind of saw right away that they were shocked and they were, you know, in awe of what actually happened and how horrible it was. And, you know, kids have short attention spans, but, you know, for the hour and a half that we were there, our guys were just engaged and locked in, and it just grabbed them.
So I think the biggest takeaway, like we talked about before, is what kind of neighbor do you want to be? Do you want to be the neighbor that risks your own family's life to save your neighbor and their children? Or do you want to be the neighbor to point them out and say, they're right there? I'm very proud of you guys because I know the kind of neighbor that you are. And I kind of know the neighbor that you want to be.
Day 4 Israel. They got us walking in the smallest tunnel in the world.
About 95 degrees out here. Me and my boy Wayne, he's trying to get like me, dark and handsome. But we're enjoying the weather, man.
I'm burning.
War Eagle.
To the Auburn football team, this is the perfect workout right here.
Man,
I'm 5-star.
The most eye-opening was probably going through that tunnel. The tunnel, because obviously we're tall and the tunnel's very small, so just having to like put yourself in his shoes on how he made that walk multiple times, you know, crouch down, stuff like that.
I'm where you just walk down feeling kind of holy.
Hey, where KD at, man?
Man, we got plenty of room out here, man. It's like really, really wide. A lot of airflow. Perfect.
Being in some of the locations where, you know, Jesus Christ walked was really impactful for me, and really left, you know, a resounding effect on me personally and spiritually.
Virgo! 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 Virgo!
Dillon Coliseum, get it?
This right here is history that people don't know, so locked in.
Auburn continued their journey through the pilgrimage steps up to the Western Wall.
The Western Wall is a place that I've always thought of as a very holy place, a place where so many prayers have been prayed over the years, and for us to stand there together and to be able to share that moment was just spectacular.
I think learning that was, you know, one site that they can 100% guarantee that, you know, Jesus walked those same steps that we walked, that left a huge impact on me and was, you know, definitely something I'm going to tell everybody when I'm talking about this trip to Israel.
It's a blessing, man. It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
The next day, the team traveled to the Dead Sea, which for many was the highlight of the trip.
First basketball player to enter the Dead Sea, dog. Yes, sir. Oh, that's water steaming.
Just the Dead Sea alone was just crazy. I felt like I was a superhero and I was able to fly. I mean, I'm 260 pounds, but being able to float for the first time was just an amazing experience. And that probably alone was the best day. And, you know, with the mud, and it just, we had mud fights and all that, so it was just pretty fun.
They trying to kill me out here. Dead Sea, it's gonna be a dead hoop.
I mean, I can't swim at all, so just letting your body go and all the salt in the water just takes over and just helps you float was just amazing.
Mama, we made it. The hoop can swim.
Dead Sea diamond.
28 karat diamond rock.
Machaya. Tahoe win.
Just throw your feet up, Will.
Oh!
War Eagle, baby. War Eagle.
God, JB4 in the Dead Sea. Let's get it, baby. It's time to float. Ramming speed.
How do you go? How do you get back up? I can't even read the Hebrew.
Local moves.
Turn upside down the right way. There you go. You got it the wrong way. There you go.
Yes, sir. Mud, baby.
Just experienced a little bit out of Dead Sea. Man, that was a great experience. You know, it does heal cuts. It also burns your cuts as well. But good experience.
Don't fart in the Dead Sea.
Yeah, don't ever do that.
Come on, man.
I'll start you off. Now you halfway there.
We're in the Sea of Galilee. We're about to go on this wooden boat and explore it, so let's get it.
10 likes and I'll push Katie overboard.
I learned the moves, baby.
The thing about it is we were on the Sea of Galilee, the same place that Jesus walked on water, and had so many of his miracles took place along that sea. For us to be out there in that sea, again, just makes the Bible just kind of so interactive for you.
The team also shared a special moment together, as several of the players and coaches were baptized in the Jordan River.
Disciple deal at the Jordan River, finna help baptize my teammates. Yes, sir. I'm a pretty proud moment, y'all.
My favorite personal part of the trip was getting baptized. As people know, I lost my mother, and that was pretty hard for me before I came to college. And one thing she always told me is get closer to the man himself because he has your best interests. So getting baptized was just an amazing feeling. felt good, and felt like I got closer. Not even by that, just by sticking to the script and just loving my God.
I got baptized, so I definitely made it known that I want to give my life to God. So I mean, I feel like I've grown spiritually in that aspect.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing. I'm just so thankful for everything, man. Just thankful.
You know, getting baptized is already a blessing, but getting baptized where, you know, Jesus himself is baptized is, you know, just something serious. For us to do that and share that moment together as a family is something that I truly, you know, cherish for the rest of my life.
While Auburn did its fill of sightseeing in Israel, the team also came to the Holy Land to play some basketball.
It was great to be able to learn a lot about ourselves. For our new players, it was the first time they're going to have to learn how to deal with me and my insanity, and my intensity and my passion, and they got a better understanding now of what to expect, you know, this coming season.
Just the experience, me being a freshman, coming in and just getting that first taste of college basketball and how BP works and how the staff works and how me and my teammates bond together on the court. That was my favorite thing that I take away from Israel.
First game, there was a ton of younger kids that were there, and you know, even though we were playing the Israeli U20 team, they were cheering for us the entire game. And you know, I think the guys love that type of stuff. I mean, after the game, they were taking pictures with all the kids and taking selfies and just getting the crowd going.
The little kids just chanting the names of our players was something that I don't think they quite realized how big and popular they were going to be over there. But seeing all of that come into fruition was something that was really cool. I mean, they were shoulder bumping one of the mop guys at one point.
Auburn would win its first two games handily versus the U20 and select team. And while the atmosphere was great for those first two games, the third game against the Israeli national team was a totally different experience.
You know, it's easy to kind of talk about the environment right here in the jungle, and this place is electric. This was different. This you could feel the admiration and the love that these people had for our team and our coaching staff.
The fans chanting, you know, in the stands. It felt like a European soccer match, right? And it's just a great feeling.
That reminded me of like a college basketball game a little bit. Just fans going crazy, jumping around.
I wasn't expecting those fans to be so crazy and so fun. And it's like, they have a jungle of their own in Israel. They're very passionate about basketball. I didn't know they were passionate about basketball that much, but
you know, our guys respected Israeli basketball a little bit more because they realized like they actually care about it enough to show up to these games to watch us play, but also to watch people that play in their country or represent their country play basketball.
I think that, you know, just playing, like having that experience against those guys, you know, going over there, you know, having that physicality, you know, night in, night out was amazing.
The way that our players were received in the little gate area headed to the buses. I mean, there's hundreds and even up to 1,000 people out there just showing how much they were appreciative of us being there and their love of the game.
This trip to Israel was more than just a trip to a different country. It was spiritual, emotional, and filled with wonderful memories that will last a lifetime.
If you think of your life's greatest moments, whether it was the birth of a child or some special a wedding or some incredible success or ceremony, it was because you did them with the people that you love. It was a special experience because it wasn't just yours, it was who you shared it with. We shared this trip as an Auburn family, as an Auburn basketball family.
We saw that the trip was so much bigger than us as an individual. And this was something that we feel like God was a part of, but also an unbelievable opportunity to walk through this with your brothers on the team and your coaching staff.
I definitely would recommend people to travel to Israel, you know. It's just the opportunity of trying different foods and the cultures there are nice.
You know, obviously, if I go back again and want my team to go back again, it'll be fun, but as a team collective, you know, it's always funner with a group of people, you know, and just being able to go there with people who you're gonna be on the court with.
The things we heard like about Israel, this and that, and compared to what we actually did over there is two different things. So like for me overall, I say Israel is a place you should go visit if you've never been. So is a place I will always go back to.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to go back to Israel. Israel is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's halfway across the world, and it's the Holy Land. I mean, there's no other place like it. That's where all of our civilization started.
I think, it's kind of obvious, but just Auburn coming to Israel to play for an international trip, it's never been done before, or, that's something I can tell my kids. My team came to Israel and played.
The Auburn basketball team's motto has been, make history. With the amazing experience the Tigers had in Israel on and off the court, it's safe to say that this trip definitely made history.
All right, let's begin with a little survey, Coach. If you have been to Israel, raise your hand. Ooh, quite a group out there that's actually been. So we're going to start talking about Israel, kind of the sites, the places and such, but I want to do a very necessary public service announcement. We joked earlier about being politically incorrect and such, but when we talk about Israel, a lot of people think that we're talking politics, policy, whatever, but I want to be very clear as a pastor. The issue of Israel is a theological issue, okay? It's the only piece of land on the planet that God deeded to a people, the Jewish people, okay? People say, we want to lay claim to it. I'm sorry, you can't lay claim to something God gave. And God gave that land to the Jewish people. And Coach, I want to stand before you and everybody else and say that's y'all's people's place, okay? Israel is the Jewish land given by God in covenant with God. And so when we talk about this, it's going to upset a lot of people. And I understand it, but at the end of the day, they're not upset with you and I. They're really upset with God because this was God's plan and he gave this place. And so let's talk about the place Israel. We've got some maps we're going to show everybody. Talk about Israel as far as its proximity, its size, and kind of, I mean, it's not a really big place.
No, it's not. And if you look at that top map right there and you see all the green.
Those are your friends, right?
Well, some of them are.
Sorry,
well,
had to line up the
not all your neighbors are friends, But those are all Muslim countries.
That's right.
And there are some Christians there, not many.
Not many.
And there are very, very few Jews there. And you got that little yellow dot right there, Israel. There are 9 million people in Israel, only 6 million Jews. There are 3 million Arabs in Israel. So when you talk about it being an apartheid state or some sort of racist or social injustice or all these other things, more than half of the nurses and the doctors in the state of Israel are Arab.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, to me growing up, my mother always wanted me to be a doctor, instead I became a basketball coach, right?
Yeah.
But, that's something I think that, again, gets very misunderstood. But in those other green areas, how safe would it necessarily to be Jewish or to be Christian?
Not very.
Not very. And so where exactly do we have your permission to live? Right?
I give you permission to live right there.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
You know why? I give you permission because that's what God said. Yeah, that's what God said. But I want you to see, you think about it, the nation, the modern state of Israel, with all of its areas, is about the size of Rhode Island. And we think about Rhode Island as a very small state here in the U.S. Imagine compared to the world at large.
Yep.
Of course, we've blown it up over here, but it's still not a very big place. It's easy to travel.
I'm just going to point to this spot right here, okay? This Mount Scopus and that little kind of tan area right there that sort of cuts, there you go, thank you. That sort of cuts in Israel. All right, so that is, in the Bible, that's known as Judea and Samaria.
Right.
But we all grew up thinking it and hearing it was the occupied West Bank or some sort of disputed territory. Well, it's the West Bank of the River Jordan. If you see the River Jordan going up and down there from the Dead Sea all the way up to the Sea of Galilee and Lake Tiberias, that's the River Jordan. The west of that is the West Bank. But the whole idea of it being occupied or disputed, about 80% of the Bible is written in communities that are in Judea and Samaria. So the other day, Chad and I were actually in Bible study, and we were reading, I think it was Genesis 47, 28 through 30. And it talked to Jacob was on his dying bed, and he asked his son, kind of grabbed him underneath the thigh, right? Asked his son, please don't let me be buried here in Egypt. And Jacob spent a lot of his life in Egypt. Take me back to where my father was born. Take me back to my homeland. I mean, to me, that's Israel. To me, so that community is Hebron, the cave of the tabernacle. That's where Abraham is buried. And that's where Jacob asked to be buried. Biblically, that's Israel.
You can't debate it biblically.
You can't. Hebron is about a 95% Palestinian Arab community that's not safe for Jews to go to.
And one thing, if those that didn't raise their hand may not realize, you joke some about the ghettos in Boston, but over there, it's very clear who lives where.
It is. It is, and
there's no real dispute of who.
Part of it is for safety and security, and that's an issue. And part of the idea of the one state or two state solution that you hear sometimes is, because in Judea and Samaria there are 2 million Arabs and there are only 1 million Jews, so the population is sort of flip-flopped, and that's where the Palestinians would like their country, as well as East Jerusalem. And when you hear the term from the river to the sea, that means they really want it all. And that's what's disputed. That's what the tension is all the time. And so it's safe and secure now because it's pretty partitioned off. There are walls there that do separate the areas, and I hope someday that the walls will be able to come down. Golda Meir had said it very, very appropriately. And I don't want this to be a one-sided argument. I don't. I'll get to that in a second. But Golda Meir said, if the Arabs would lay down their guns, there could be peace. But if the Jews laid down their guns, there'd be no more Jews. And unfortunately, that is the case for some. But I'll tell you, it is changing. It's really, really changing. Because there are many of the Israeli Arabs are doing very, very well in a democracy. And one of my missions and one of my things that I work on is to try to, my wife and I do, is to try to help Arabs in Israel prosper and be in business. But the Palestinian Authority, if they're in areas where they're in power, if they catch a Palestinian doing business with a Jew, that's a death sentence. That's really hard it's hard for normalization, and it's hard to have peace when that's their leadership right now. So that's part of the great challenge.
Now, I know on this tour it wasn't a part of it. At least I don't think it was. Have you ever been up to what we call the peace fence up north with Syria?
Well, I've been in the Golan Heights.
Right, the Golan Heights.
So yeah, but I don't know that I've been. Well, yeah. In fact, we spent a little time up there.
A lot of people don't realize on the border of Israel and southern Syria, there's a fence. Yeah, obviously there's a fence there because of multiple reasons, but as you well mentioned, there's a great frequency of missiles, bombs, and a lot of things of destruction coming over into Israel. And what happens is that the military on the other side occupies the residents' houses and makes it basically military quarters to fight Israel. And they call it the peace fence because the Jewish people in the middle of the night go up to the fence and give their enemies food and water. They've been displaced by their own military. They've basically been made homeless, and the Jewish people. So again, it goes back to what Golda Meir said. A lot of truth to that. And we talk about the history. This is, God deeded land. But let's even talk modern history. Post World War I, there was a guy by the name of Balfour from England who declared that was Israel's land, always had been, always should be. We had to go through another world war, and then in 1948, the entire United Nations said, guess what, it's yours. Then in 67, you had to fight. 73, you had to fight. And today, still have to fight for something that God and history has said is yours. But it's a special place, not only because it's deeded by God, but I guess we'll go in the secular. The Dead Sea, the players had fun at the Dead Sea, didn't they?
Well, they're kids, like I said, it was
literally big kids.
Yeah, they're big guys, and they had fun. They went to, it was like going to a water park, they just, and they did. And so you got to keep that in mind when you do go visit, when you bring young people. That's something that they're going to want to see. Right. I've been there a few times. I've floated there. I've had it, been there, done. It was good. Oh yeah. But the kids loved it. Yeah. They did.
But another thing, this is just for me.
It's the lowest place on earth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you really do float. You can't help but float.
Can't help but float.
No. But one of the things that I find interesting, and if you don't mind going back to the map, you'll notice where the Dead Sea is in relationship to the Golan Heights up top, where we talked about the Golan Heights, the mountain range where you see all the snow up top, a lot of disputed areas. Well, that's where we find modern-day Caesarea Philippi, which is a very important Bible or passage to Christians in Matthew 16. But basically, the snow melts, goes down what we know as the Jordan River, where you saw the baptisms, comes to the Dead Sea, evaporates, goes back to the Golan Heights and comes back. It's the only self-perpetuating water system in the world. It's the only place where if you never leave, God makes sure that you have water. I just find that interesting that God gave his people a place where he would always give them water no matter what. You don't find it anywhere else in the world but right there. Now, did y'all get to go to Masada?
Brandon, we've been to Masada before. We didn't take the kids. We drove by it as you're on the way
Yeah, just a fascinating place for, just real quick for people who don't know, in 70 AD, which began what we know as the dispersion of the Jewish people for almost 2,000 years. Masada was for basically 3 years where the Jewish people camped out, and the Romans eventually obviously overtook it. But even in modern day Israel, when the army goes up there, they basically say, this is the last place we give up, is Masada. And one of the fascinating modern context is here you are, the Dead Sea's at the bottom, you're on this amazing military encampment, and you see the fighter jets doing their sweeps around, because I mean, that's like the one place that if it all goes down, don't give up this place, you know. And it also has its own self-perpetuating water system. But enough of all that. Staying on the secular side, I'm gonna get serious for a moment. The Holocaust Museum. It's personal for you, Coach, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just a tourist site. It's not just it. It's personal, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is.
A lot of people may not know how personal it is.
Well, it's personal for a lot of reasons. But you know, I'm 62 years old, so I was born in 1960, 15 years after the gates opened up, and you know, we learned that 6 million of my brothers and sisters were murdered because of how they prayed. That's just 15 years before I was born, and so those are a couple of tough realities when I was younger, and I didn't really know about Israel all that much. But the man I loved the most in my entire life was my grandfather, my father's father. He emigrated to this country in 1920 from Ternopil, which was in Ukraine, right on the border of Poland. And he was 11 years old, and he brought his 3 younger siblings, 2 sisters and a baby, to America. And his parents couldn't afford to come or send other members of their family. And so one night, Papa was watching TV. Papa never watched TV. He'd come home, he worked hard, he was a plumber, he worked hard, get up at sunrise, go work, always went to bed right after supper. And he's watching TV this one night, sitting in front of the TV, and he's crying. So I walked 7, I walked over and said, Papa, why are you crying? He put me up on his lap, and he told me about Israel. It was 1967. It was a 6-day war. And Papa said, I'm afraid to go to sleep because I'm afraid that when I wake up, Israel won't be there. Well, why was Israel so important to Papa, the home of the Jewish people, God's holy land? And then he told me then about his family. And he said, you know, if in 1920 Israel was a Jewish state, more of my family would have been able to go to Israel a lot less expensively, and they would have survived the Holocaust. What happened in Germany happened to a culturally rich country, a religious country, a Christian country, right?
Religious.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call slaughtering millions of people an act of God.
But no, I mean the Catholic Church was strong there at the time, very strong. Culture, science, technology, they had the greatest military. This was not a third world country. No. And somehow through social media, through fake news, if you will, right? Through social media, they were able to somehow be able to, in many ways, brainwash a population that this was going to be good for Germany, that somehow the people were the problem. So anyways, Israel mattered. I got it right then, right?
Right.
It mattered then.
You're in 2nd grade.
To me.
And all of a sudden, so the name of the Holocaust Museum means a name and a memorial. And I'm going to ask a hard question, but I'm going to ask it. Are there names of your family members?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. And so you go there and you read the names up there, and it looks just like your synagogue registry. It looks just like the membership, all the names. So absolutely it does. And then we say never again. And so the question is, how am I supposed to make sure that it's never again? Part of it is being here tonight. Part of here is visiting with my Christian brothers and sisters. And if we educate you a little bit about what happened or what is Israel right now, and you might feel differently. It may just reinforce what you already believe. And so that's kind of what we're doing, because if it happened, look, it happens all the time. It's happening now. There's genocide all over the world, and you know, what are we going to do about it? I say we stand up, we call it out. I'm for a strong country. I'm for the strongest United States of America, because when the United States of America is strong, the world is safe. And period. When America is strong, the world is safe. And when America is not strong, or if America is not strong or not a great ally, the world is not safe. And historically, when the world's not been safe, it's not a very good place, a very good time for the Jewish people, not a very good time for Christians.
So again, one of the darkest moments in at least modern, if not all of human history, is what we know as the Holocaust. You know, it's interesting, you know, obviously throughout years, Judaism, Christianity, there's as you call it in one of your videos, we're cousins. I think that's a good description. You know, there's been a lot of horrible things done under the umbrella of Christianity. And I know, unfortunately, a lot of the acts were done by people who called themselves Christians. Mm-hmm. But I dare say they were not, Coach. If you believe in the Jesus of the Bible, if you believe in his life, his death, his resurrection, you don't do to the Jewish people what they did. I know they did it under the name and under the umbrella, and for that, history has recorded it. But I want you to hear, as a born-again Christian, the Jewish people are God's people, and you don't do that to God's people for a lot of different reasons. And that being said, it is history. May it never be repeated. But you know, we have a bad problem of not learning from history.
Right.
Do we not? People tend to repeat it all the time.
Or learn from the Bible. I mean, it's just true. And it's the world's greatest history book. And we're living in times right now where so many of the things that are prophesied are happening right now. And I don't need to tell you, because I know you know the scriptures, God has commanded the Gentiles to stand with Israel. You can't read the Bible and say, well, I'm going to believe this, but not this, because I'm not comfortable with this. God has commanded the Gentiles to stand with Israel. Because guess what? When Jesus comes back, you can go to Israel, and there is a place there where he is coming back.
It's called Mount Zion.
It's called Mount Zion. You can go. I hear you guys are going to be taking a trip there. Y'all going to go see that.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see it. And you know, I'll tell you what, when he does come back, I'm going to be on the side of Israel. I'm telling you right, I ain't going to mess around, man. I'm going to be on the side of Israel.
You know, whether he comes back in our lifetime or not, I'd say just it's safe to be on the side of Israel, no matter what's going on. That's just a good place to be. So, all right, so obviously on the secular side, you got the Dead Sea, you got the Holocaust Museum, a lot of different places. On the sacred side, a question I asked you on the phone the other day, but I have to ask, how did those players get into the Church in the Nativity in Bethlehem? There's this door called the Door of Humility. And
Only you could get into that.
I
church,
could
right?
get into it. Easy.
You wouldn't even have to bend down.
No. Man, I just walked through like nobody's business. I got this. And for our non-visited Israel folks, if you've ever been to the dwarf house that Chick-fil-A has, it's a lot like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right, Coach. I don't have to go down low. It's great. Don't worry about it. It's an easy fit for me. But how did those guys get through?
Well, they like John I said, kind of like a football player, they kind of crouched down and they did that little crawl. And man, if you needed to go through a little space to get to where Jesus was born, you'd get down there too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know. And but being in Bethlehem was really, really special.
Now it's Palestinian territory.
It is. But
makes you a little nervous, me personally.
It is. You know what's interesting? Do you remember hearing the chanting from the church during that filming? Remember that chanting? All right, if I were to close my eyes and not know exactly where that was from, we were in a Greek Christian Orthodox church in Bethlehem. I could close my eyes and absolutely hear a cantor davening and speaking Hebrew with the exact same dialect. Mm. Oh, it was the same. It was what I have grown up with. And but why wouldn't it be? because Mary and Joseph were right there in Bethlehem. They were Jewish.
That's right.
And there were a lot of things that they talked about that, just, so obviously being there was great, but it does then get you to wonder, okay, why do we see certain pictures about Jesus' birth? Because this was a very interesting discussion, all right? Jesus, both Mary and Joseph were Orthodox Jews. They kept the Bible. Joseph would never be near Mary during anything involving either birth
That's right.
or once a month, right?
That's right.
I'm not sure what you call that appropriately.
Once a
But
month.
you all got it, once a month.
We got it.
Oh, I'm not, baby. I'm not going to go
I'm
there.
looking at my wife
Brandy's
over-
looking at me. Brandy's looking
My
at me.
wife's looking at me over
don't
there.
you go make
See,
that.
we're
no,
crossed
no,
right
all
here.
right. I'm not.
All right.
And yet, so anytime you would see a picture that would be including with Joseph being in the picture, there's no way that would happen. So every now and then it makes you kind of step back and wonder whether or not some things get rewritten.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not as popular. But anyway, it was really, really cool. Bethlehem is about 20 minutes outside of Jerusalem. And once again, Bethlehem is in Samaria.
That's right.
To me, that's part of
It's
Israel.
a biblical no-brainer, but it's a political mess.
It's a political mess.
It's basically what it is. So one of the things, whether it be in Bethlehem or other places, when I take a tour, and I'm taking about 100 folks this next March, going back for me, a lot of them will be there for the first time. You go every May, is that correct?
We do.
You go every May. I kind of have a joke that when you go to Israel, when you go to these sites, if there's a church built there, that's probably not where it happened. Because the tour guides will say, hey, this is where we traditionally believe, but it probably happened about 100 yards over there.
Right.
So, you're walking through, I'll just be honest, sometimes these churches are a little bit gaudy, for lack of better terms, a little bit ornate. But a lot of times, that's probably not the actual place. It was probably in the vicinity thereof. Right. Because, you are in Bethlehem. You are in these respective places. And so, when I'm there, I kind of like to take the scenic route and kind of go around some of these places just personally as everybody's touring, just kind of say, this is probably more likely where that could have occurred. Because one of the things is, and you know this, that people have made a lot of money on tourism over there with all the different sites and the different places. And so you go to the Sea of Galilee, you're on there, they're dancing on the boat, having a good old time. It's not real big, is it?
No, it's
Lake Martin's huge compared to the Sea of Galilee.
The Sea of Galilee would take about 45 minutes to drive around the entire lake. And it doesn't have all the fingers that Lake Martin does, but it's just a big circle. And, it was amazing when they kind of, there it is right there. Yeah, those are the Golan Heights right there behind. And so if you look right along the shoreline, okay, right around that shoreline right there, when they kind of carved up Israel in 1948 and they decided what's going to be what, they gave Israel the Sea of Galilee, but they gave them the shoreline about 5 miles inland, right to the base of the mountains. And they gave Syria and Lebanon all that you see above. Well, that's not very realistic to be defensible, is it? And so for between 1948 and 1967, that was a pretty good place to be launching all kinds of attacks and rockets. So now Israel has got the Golan Heights, and Syria has annexed it to Israel. In other words, they've given up on them, and that's good for both sides. That's good for the safety and security. I will tell you, we felt very, very safe there. Very, very safe there.
I feel safe. I feel safer there than in Atlanta. No offense to Atlanta.
No, there's no question. There's no question. Look, there's a lot of security, cameras everywhere, and there's military there. This group that I'm speaking with tonight, some of you a little older than me, some of you my age, so on and so forth. And so when I talk about loving our country and talk about patriotism and talk about people that are been in the service, been in the armed service and willing to give their life for their country, one of the things that you patriots will be very pleased with is when you see these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who all have to serve in the Army for 3 years. They all have to serve in the Army. And they're willing to put a gun on and put a uniform on and be trained to defend their country. I'm sure that speaks to a lot of you. I wish our kids loved our country, the same way, or are grateful for the country. And I think one of the things that you do when you go there is the people love the land. They love the land, and they're grateful to be back home. They're grateful, that God's, brought them back and helped them be prosperous right now. And of course, this is all part of the revelation and all part of what's to come. and particularly, the million or so Jews that left Russia, years ago. It's all right there. And but it's a good thing to see. It's a fun thing to sing. So you'll enjoy the people. You'll enjoy the all different shapes and sizes, and the diversity and the cultures, the food, the wine. It's a great visit. And go with somebody that we talked about. Go with somebody that you love. Go with somebody that you know. You know who wants to go see it. Make somebody's bucket list. That's one of the things that we've done too. Brandy and I have done, and it's been a great mitzvah. As we've traveled, we've tried to identify a couple every year, sometimes a couple couples that I'd love to go, but just it's not cheap. Can't quite do it. Sponsoring somebody to go, that's sort of how we are. That's how my staff all felt. That's why we're grateful to Auburn. So grateful to Auburn for having been able to let us raise the money to send our players there and let them see it.
Well, we could talk Israel all night, but let's talk Jerusalem. I mean,
Okay.
that really, we can talk Sea of Galilee, all these, but Jerusalem, I mean, that's where all the action was, and takes place. Saw the players at the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall. Of course, there's the Temple Mount in that picture there. There's an old joke about real estate: location, location, location.
Yep.
That is the most valuable piece of property on the planet,
Yep.
right there. That Temple Mount.
It really is. And so right here, just a couple of things first. That obviously that's the Temple Mount right up there. Okay, the Golden Dome, and that's actually a mosque. Yes. That's a Muslim mosque, and that's the third or fourth holiest place, according to for the Muslims. And look, this is, let's see, I think this is the Western Wall right here.
Yes, sir.
Right, that's the Wailing Wall. And no, wait a second. Hold on a second.
This is east. This is east. West should be over here.
Yeah, but I do think that
I don't know
these,
where we are, Coach.
These are the southern steps right here. Okay?
Yeah, I know. So Western Wall's over here.
Yeah, it's over here. But they just built one thing on top of another, right? That's the thing about the churches and the mosques and the temple. They just, whoever kind of took it over and controlled it, they just kind of try to, a little bit try to erase history. And that wall there at the top there that's around the city, that is a very young wall. The stuff that's inside that is actually much older and much more ancient. And I think, again, the cool thing is like on those southern steps right there, kind of where my head is, look, that's in the Bible where Jesus ministered. That's where he would walk up to Jerusalem and he would stop and people would kind of gather around him and he'd minister right there on those southern steps. So that's a pretty cool place to spend some time and worship and just stay there. And man, if you Chad had mentioned something about the Garden of Gethsemane. It's not a very big place, but it's absolutely as you would imagine it to be, with olive trees and green and things like that. And much of the year, there are these red poppy flowers that grow in the grass. They're kind of natural. And to me, it's a very unusual looking plant. And to me, all those red flowers sort of signify maybe Jesus' tears and the pain that he suffered when he was betrayed. But he knew it was happening. He knew it was going to happen. And you can't help but be there and feel that connected and then feel grateful. Just feel so special and so grateful that you have an opportunity to be in such a holy place. Honestly, feeling not worthy. Growing up Jewish, I could tell you that you have a question why we put a kippah on our head, why we wear that yarmulke, or why we would cover ourselves with a prayer shawl, is because God is so holy that being in His presence is, Moses had to take off his, God asked him to take off his shoes because he was walking on holy ground, and then obviously Jesus came along and kind of made that connection a little bit easier, and which I'm grateful for.
So obviously you can't talk about Israel or Jerusalem without talking a whole lot about Jesus. And I'll be quite honest, with your Jewish background, you've mentioned his name a whole lot more than I expected you to, Coach. Okay?
You know what Jesus' name is in Hebrew?
Yeshua.
Yeshua. You know the translation for Yeshua?
Joshua.
Salvation. salvation, right? All right. Now, it wasn't like they just recently made the name up. That's what they called him. They called him Yeshua. The whole time he was a Jewish rabbi, they called him Yeshua. That was his name. That was Jesus' name.
So we've talked about the birth, talked about a bunch of miracles, life, Southern Steps, a lot of ministry and such. So grandfather was an Orthodox Jew, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah.
All right, because I know there's lots of different branches therein.
Yep.
In fact, I've got a friend of mine calls himself a conservadox. He's both conservative and Orthodox. Only Jews could pull that
we
off
can do
somehow.
that, right,
yeah,
right.
y'all can do that.
That's kind of like a Presbyterian.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or a Baptist-Costal.
Right,
we got
yeah.
a lot of different combinations therein. And so, obviously, you know, and again, I know we're in a large audience today, but the contention, obviously, between Judaism and Christianity even 2,000 years ago was on the identity of the Messiah.
Yep.
You know, Jesus means Yeshua. It means Messiah. It means Redeemer. It means salvation.
Yep.
And so, again, as one who grew up Jewish, how do you reconcile that?
Man, I'm so glad you asked me that question. It's complicated, right? It's complicated. So, you know, it bothers me. It bothers me a little bit when we read about the Pharisees and how the Pharisees are portrayed. So let's stop and think about who the most religious Jews would have been back then. Take the name Pharisee out. The most religious Jews were the ones that did not, at that time, accept Jesus as the Messiah. Some of the most religious Christians in East Alabama are sitting right here in this church. The most faithful. Proud to call yourself Baptist and religious and observant and doing the best you possibly can. So I try to think back and said, who were the ones that kind of didn't deny him? Well, part of the reason is if you read the Old Testament, you hear all about, you know, one of the holiest prayers in the Jewish religion is called the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And throughout the Old Testament, over and over and over again, God commands us and reminds us and punishes us when somehow we went astray from him and only him. And so obviously, you know, they didn't see Jesus coming. You know, they thought Jesus may come as a king or a ruler or somebody that would be wealthy. How would you expect that the Messiah would be a minister or a rabbi or somebody that would be, you know, that's not exactly. So I'm just, again, forgive me. I'm kind of just telling you how I was meant to think of it and raised. And so, but as a result of God sending Jesus to save the rest of the world and to bring the Gentiles into covenant with him, right, his God, the Jewish people at the time, I don't think they did a very good job of sharing it, of spreading it. I don't think they prevented anybody from, you know, because obviously the mikvah, which was around before baptism, was a water ritual of dunking the entire body. If you wanted to become Jewish, you submersed in the mikvah water, and I mean, there's so many different parallels there. So, how do I kind of, where do I bridge the gap with you now? Why do I keep talking about Jesus in such a way? All right, so Jesus coming made it a little difficult for the Jews, right? Partly because of the anti-Semitism, and part of the fact that through the Crusades and through some of the I've got so many Christian friends, my wife at the top of my list, that prays every day for me because she knows what eternal life is for her, and she wants it exactly that way for me. Sometimes that love can be misconstrued to that people that are trying to convert you, trying to make you be somebody else. My wife wants it for me because she loves me. Sure. But there are others that wanted it for the Jews because they thought the Jews were wrong. I don't think there was any right or any wrong. So here's where I've been on my walk. So one of the minister that married Brandy and I, Presbyterian minister, probably a Presbyterian Baptist minister, one of my dearest friends in the world, John Wood, we got talking one day, and he said, let me ask you a question. He said, do you believe that Abraham, really, tell me now, do you really believe that God was a part of this story? that God brought him and told him to take his son Isaac up to the mountain and be prepared to sacrifice him, and that God actually did provide the ram and a sacrifice. Do you really believe it actually happened? I said, John, I absolutely do. And that God was a part of it. Yep. I said, absolutely. Didn't do it alone. Okay. He said, now do you believe that Moses, given who Moses was, a shepherd, right? That somehow he was able to come back and get the Pharaoh to release the Jews from 200 years of slavery. It was at least 200, maybe longer. And that God was a part of that. Like Moses couldn't have done it by himself. Yes, I believe it actually happened. So then he said, so how can it be so difficult for you then to believe that Jesus, a rabbi, the son of Mary and Joseph, could have started the world's greatest religion in the world by himself? And the answer is he couldn't. The answer is he couldn't. His Father God sent him to save the world. And so that's kind of my journey. Now, that is not my public declaration of being a Christian. I'm Jewish. I will never, ever, ever give that identity up because my people have been murdered for keeping their faith. And that's my father's religion. That's my grandfather's religion. That's how I was raised. I will never, ever. And when I get there, but for the grace of God, but for his grace, will he forgive me for keeping my faith?
So you went there. By the way, in the Baptist church, we call what you just did a sermon. Okay?
Well, then about now, everybody be getting up and leaving.
Sometimes they leave during it. I'll tell you what. So you went there, so I'll go there. Again, I appreciate all that. Yeah. So do you, talking about Jesus' birth, life, miracles, do you personally believe Jesus rose from the dead?
I do believe in the miracles. I do.
Because that's kind of where it all hinges for us.
It is.
Because we can do without all the other. But
and by the way, another connector. What's the first thing that Mary said when she saw him? Rabbi. That's the first words that Jesus heard when he rose from the dead was rabbi. Guys, do you not see the connection? But like Brandy said, I didn't, Jeff, am I right? Not the first thing that Mary said when she saw?
Rabboni, yeah, exactly. So Mary Magdalene, not
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene. So
I know it's a tough question to ask in front of an audience, but we are in Israel at this point.
Well, I mean, Brandy said, don't cuss and tell the truth.
You haven't cussed yet.
I haven't cussed yet, but it's still early.
Still early.
Still early.
We get a couple bad calls and you might have.
Yeah, you watch.
I just thought I'd ask because we talked about what. So at the end, you talk about the importance of Israel, even beyond your personal Judaistic faith, my personal Christian faith. We kind of hammered all that out here in public. So we're about to walk away from here. Everybody has their own decision to make about who they believe the Messiah is or is not. But there is no decision to make about the land of Israel. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. There is no debate there. There is no discussion. Just kind of in closing, you're kind of in partnership with some folks that are really trying to promote that. Do you want to kind of talk about that as we close?
Yeah, and I've got some information up here. One of the things that Brandy and I have done is there's so much misinformation, right, about Israel. Like, how about this? The fact that if you put that map up again, there had never been a congressman, congresswoman, senator, ambassador that has ever gone into Judea and Samaria until President Trump declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel, and then his ambassador, David Friedman, and his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and through the work of this organization that I'm involved with, U.S. Israel Educational Association, that takes congressional leaders. Now you think about Congress, think about people that get elected to Congress. They work in the community, they have regular jobs, they don't know everything that there is to know about everything. No, they don't.
Oh,
no,
sorry,
I don't think they do.
I have the spiritual gift of sarcasm.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
And so, and yet, if the United States doesn't, the United States has been a great ally of Israel's. And probably, years and years ago, I don't think it was in the United States' best financial interest. All the Arab states, all the neighbors, the neighborhood had all the oil and had all the wealth. And it probably, what kind of a trade-off was it, other than the fact that Israel was a democracy? But now, I could tell you right now, Israel might be this country's greatest ally. Now, I'm not trying to take away from our friends in the United Kingdom or in France or anywhere else around the world. But those people there are keeping that place kind of calm down a little bit, and they're a great ally. I hope that our country continues to be a great ally. But without Iron Dome, without the missile defense system, which is very, very costly, that place would be gone because all those missiles would be landing. When your Auburn basketball team was in Israel, out of the Gaza Strip, Islamic Jihad had launched 1,000 rockets in a period of about a week, and we were there. I was getting phone calls from parents, and when are you guys coming home? And again, do you trust me? I'm not going to put your son in. So we were sitting on the beach of Tel Aviv watching the puffs of smoke. There goes another one.
But that's just everyday life there.
Well, it's not everyday life. You don't get to listen. I don't want to scare you guys from not going. I mean,
I'm going.
It's not every day. But this country has been a great ally, for Israel and a great defender. And quite frankly, if those rockets would have landed and killed either the 6 million Jews or the 3 million Arabs or the Christians that are there, Israel would go on the offensive like nobody's business. But right now they don't have to. Right now they can just be in a defensive, situation right now. But they're prepared. They're prepared, and they will do what they need to do to keep that region safe.
As we wrap up, Coach has got some literature down here if you want to afterwards that you can hand out.
Yeah, there is some information, and I know you were leading me into that, and we don't have to show that next video. It's fine.
But the literature's available for free.
Yeah, the literature's available. This is the group that I travel with, and it's a great way. If you'd be interested, you'd take one, and I'd love to tell you more about it. So that's it.
As a perennial Power 5 basketball coach, you have influence with congressional members, and you have the ability of this organization. As just a local Baptist pastor, let me implore those of us who don't have the connections you have, that in your daily conversations, if you claim the name of Jesus as your Savior, then you have to defend Israel as God's people's land. And that's a theological issue. And I want to implore you in daily conversation, because this stuff comes up all the time. It's not just stuff that makes headlines. These are conversations people have over coffee. And a lot of times the big difference happens when the little conversations happen on regular. And so that's kind of, Coach, why I wanted you here tonight to celebrate the land of Israel, to talk about its history, its prophecy, obviously the significance, both secular and sacred. And I cannot thank you enough for being here with us, Coach.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you all very, very much. I love my country, and I love this community. And I am grateful that my family can live here, worship as we please, be your basketball coach. I'm a Jewish basketball coach in Auburn, Alabama. Are you kidding me? What a great country we live in. So, War Eagle.
Thanks, Coach.